And the next and the last session is future-proof. We talked about the future all the time, but now we're going to have some specific ideas about the future. We're going to talk about nature enhancement. We're going to talk about hydrogen and cybersecurity, all three very important in our future. We're going to start with Marjolein Kelder. She's a senior project manager of the rich Noordzee, and that organization is focusing on nature enhancement in the sea. And as he says it, because when it comes to nature enhancement and building offshore wind parks, there is a unique opportunity. I want to welcome you, Marjolein, to the floor and do your presentation. Thank you. Give her a big hand, please.
Wrong presentation. I'm not sure. Let me start. My name is Marjolein Kelder, as just mentioned. I'm a project manager for the program called the Rich Noordzee. We are doing nature enhancement in offshore wind farms. And I'll talk to you a little bit about the state of our North Sea at the moment, the opportunities that lie within nature enhancement in combination with offshore wind, and why it is important to seize these opportunities. Let's see if this works. I see here. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, here we go. Our North Sea is one of the biologically most productive bodies of water on the planet. The strong currents and seasonal storms mix the shallow waters, creating an incredibly productive environment that draws in wildlife from far and wide. It is, however, also one of the most busiest used seas in the world, and decades of impacts have already caused profound changes. Nature is disrupted by a multitude of human impacts, such as fisheries, marine trafficking, oil and gas exploitation, and the decline of marine species and habitats is telling us that the North Sea is in trouble. And that is reflecting a wider nature crisis that our planet is in. Looking at our Dutch North Sea, about 100 to 200 years ago, in about 30% of the North Sea, large oyster beds could be found. But due to overfishing and diseases, almost all of these habitats have disappeared. And at the current moment, only a fraction, which is 0.3% of the seafloor, is protected from bottom trawling. And climate change is now adding to these pressures. So we are in a nature and in a climate crisis. And as we all know, and why we are here these last couple of days, we need marine renewable energies, such as offshore wind, to deliver the carbon emission reductions and reach our climate goals. The ambitions for the expansion, as we all heard, are enormous, with a large part of the European offshore wind planned in the North Sea, with about 70 gigawatts planned by 2050 in the Dutch part of the North Sea. So will offshore wind be just another industry, or will it help reduce footprints and boost restoration? Healthy seas are a key ally in fighting climate change because sequestering and locking carbon. So it is therefore also vital that we accelerate nature protection and restoration at the same speed as we do offshore wind, and hand in hand. Besides risks that we know of as collision and underwater noise, offshore wind also offers opportunities. And these opportunities lie within all other activities being excluded from these areas, giving the seafloor a chance to recover. To reduce risks, we need to take measures such as careful selection of the areas where we develop offshore wind. These areas need to be away from the areas that are have the highest value for nature. And also, effective minimization can eliminate negative effects that offshore wind can have, such as limiting the underwater noise and mitigating collision risks. Research into the effectiveness of these applied measures is very important to learn if and how these measures work and adapt them further into the future. And this also goes for nature-enhancing measures. If you follow the mitigation hierarchy, the previous steps, avoidance and mitigation, together with restoration, aim to reduce as far as possible effects that a project can have on nature. But even after effective application of these measures, additional steps are needed to achieve no overall negative impact. And since we are operating in a system that is already in a degraded state, achieving no negative impact is not enough. We need to strive towards achieving a positive impact. So to work towards achieving these positive impacts, you can take either passive or active nature enhancement measures. Passive measures lie within exclusion, protection, and rest. And active measures, they change the marine environment. So you can either take active measures to increase the effect an offshore wind farm has on nature by, for example, adding artificial reefs, or by limiting the effect an offshore wind farm has, but, for example, by working without scour in a sandy environment. Which options you choose should always take, depend on the area, and they should always take the intrinsic value of the area into consideration. So our program, the Rich Noordzee, aims to learn about all these different nature enhancement measures. And we want to spread the knowledge and anchor nature enhancement in policy and legislation, so it becomes the new standard in every new offshore wind farm. It is a 4-year program that was started by the Noordzee Foundation and Natuur, Milieu, and it is funded by the Dutch postcode lottery. The program officially ends December next year, but we are already exploring options to prolong the program because it's still relevant as ever. On the map, you can see the projects that we are working on. So we're working in 5 different offshore wind farms. We're also testing some outplacement structures and artificial reefs in an offshore test site. And together with hatcheries and knowledge institutes, we're working towards having a Bonamia-free. Bonamia is a parasite for European flat oysters that can help us restore reefs in the North Sea. All the aggregated data that comes out of the program, all information, results, and publications will be shared open source through an online platform that we for now call the Toolbox. And this needs to be easily accessible to all interested parties. So if you are going to develop an offshore wind farm, you can use our Toolbox to see what the options are. With the fast expansion of offshore wind, it is taking place faster than our ecological knowledge. And it's leaving us with large knowledge gaps on which to base informed decisions. And to help us close these knowledge gaps, we need to monitor ecological indicators within the wind farm closely, and we need to support research to better understand the ecological risks and opportunities. It is essential that the fauna and flora is surveyed during the planning phase of an offshore wind farm, so you have a baseline. And then that monitoring is continued throughout the lifetime of the wind farm using the BACY method, so the before, after control and impact. I will now show you some examples of projects that we ourselves are working on. Luchte Duinen, it's a project together with Eneco van Oort. It was one of the first projects, started the program in 2019, where we outplaced some adult oysters. because, as I said, in 30% of the North Sea, we used to have these large reefs, and they have a really good function, being a shelter for juvenile fish and other species. So this year, in November 2020, we outplaced another 1,000 adult oysters using broodstock structures. These look like these. We tried to mimic the natural situation that an oyster would grow in on an offshore reef as much as possible. And these tables, we placed 4 of them on the scour protection of the wind turbine, and they will stay there until 2028. And we will monitor using ROV and taking water samples for environmental DNA. And just to give you a short idea of what it looks like below water, this is what the scour protection looked like before we placed the oyster tables. And we're hoping that it's an interesting, it's gone, but that it's a nice place for the oyster larvae to settle on. Then on to another project that we're working with is together with Vattenfall and Hollandse Kust Zuid. They have placed water replenishment holes on the bottom of their foundation, allowing for marine life to enter and leave again. So we are measuring multiple abiotic factors such as oxygen, salinity, and temperature inside and outside of the turbine. And we're also using water samples for the environmental DNA. And the first results were promising because we already could find shrimp and other life within the turbine, and even had a seal visiting us at some point. So. Blauwwind is an amazing project that we are also working on, where we outplaced 2,400 oysters in 2020. And when we visited after a year, we lifted one of the oyster tables, and we found a 69% survival of the oysters. And not only did they survive, but they'd also grown. So we could see they had growth rings on the side of it, and there was a lot of biodiversity found around the table. So these are really promising results. And then a final project I want to tell you something about is our Gemini project. It's up in the north of the North Sea. It's one of the locations that we actually know on the oyster, on maps that there used to be a natural oyster reef. So here in 2021, we outplaced 1,500 oysters and 18 tons of shell material. And again, now we added adult oysters and a lot of shell material. And in the coming years, a lot of researchers will go back to see how the reef in the making is doing, and hopefully it will form a reef that can sustain itself. So in conclusion, what we have learned thus far, some more pictures of the Gemini project. But what we have learned thus far, and what is certain, is that we have to act now, or we'll miss the momentum. So as the rollout of offshore wind is going extremely fast, we need to match this pace for nature, or even exceed it. We don't have time for year-long experiments. So this means we need to be bold at times and think about large steps, such as nature opportunities, or helping nature outside of offshore wind farms. Offshore wind has a chance to reduce footprints and boost restoration, but this can only be achieved with an ambitious commitment on nature enhancement. And I think we all need to go above and beyond for our North Sea. So this is a little bit about our program. Thank you very much. I understood I can answer some questions now if there are any. And,
Thank you, Marjolein. I've got one question. Yeah. Are we going to see the bluefin tuna back in the North Sea? Because we saw that picture of you in Hamburg, and it looks very exotic. We don't see it now anymore, and that shows, of course, how much the ecosystems are under pressure.
Yeah, I would be happy if they returned, and I could only hope that they grow to that size again, but maybe just start hoping for return.
All right. Well, thanks, Marjolein. Give her a big hand, please.